Welcome to the Helping Families Be Happy podcast, where we explore the often messy world of family, love, and relationships. I'm your host for this podcast, Adina Oberman, a mom, author, early childhood educator, and part of the Familias marketing team. I'm also the creator of Big Books for Little Hands, a site dedicated to connecting parents and teachers with the best books for the ups and downs of life with young children. We welcome today's guest, Barbara Beery. As founder of Foodie Kids Culinary Center, foodiekids.com, and Kid Chef Kitchen, kidchefkitchen.com, Barbara has spent the past 30 years as a major branding spokesperson and is the author of 20 cookbooks. Her newest cookbook, Ooh La La, Kids Cook French, launches this November 2025. This episode aligns with the Familias habits Eat Together and Talk Together. You can learn more about the Familias 10 Habits of Happy Families by going to the Habit Hub blog on familias.com. For the video portion of this podcast, please visit the Familias YouTube channel. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to get started talking about all of your work, but particularly about the new cookbook, Ooh La La Kids Cook French. So tell us about the cookbook, some of what people can expect, and can you share a little bit about where the idea for this came from?
Well, yes, to all of those things. First of all, I loved cooking when I was a child. I had the very fortunate experience. My mom was a wonderful German cook, and I was the baby of the family. So I always got to be in the kitchen with her. I was never told, get out, don't do this. She let me do everything. And so that's where I began, truthfully, as a child. And the first cookbook I ever got, my dad was in the printing business, and it was Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And that, as we all know, is a classic. Having never really read a cookbook before, I guess I was about 20-ish. I opened it up and started looking at it, and I just was mesmerized. So basically, that's what I cut my teeth on. I didn't realize how intricate it was. I followed the directions, and I loved it. And I guess that's really where it all started, because that was my first cookbook, and I've always loved French cooking. Now, as far as the kids go, children can learn anything if they're taught and it's done in segments and it's something that's appropriate for their age level. They have no qualms about cooking like a lot of adults do. They don't have that fear of failing. And so to me, it just seemed like a natural segue. I wrote a French cookbook, a baking cookbook some years ago, but we wanted to expand on that and go really to a little different age. The first French cookbook was more for the younger children. And this is more geared to, I would say, 10, 11, 14, 15, and honestly, adults. It's a very simplistic approach to French cooking with the classic elements and ingredients. And so I'm really excited about it. And I had such fun writing it.
As we're talking about it, I'm finding that I'm getting a little bit hungry. So I want to ask you if you can share some of your maybe some highlights from the cookbook or recipes you really enjoy, some favorite dishes that people can look forward to.
I somehow knew you were going to ask that. And that's always the most difficult thing to answer, because truthfully, I love all of them. I can remember one of the first things that I made were crepes. And that is one of the most simple, easy ingredients. Make, put in the fridge, let the batter glutinate so that all the elements come together. And then when you fry them up, you can put them in the freezer and virtually keep them for months, and you can fill them with sweet goodies or fill them with chicken or fish or whatever you want to. I think it's one of the most versatile recipes. I love it a lot. I also love the French version of pesto, which is pistou, and it's made with parsley instead of basil. And I think that's an element that you can put into a lot of different dishes. Of course, I love the desserts. I have to tell you, I do love the desserts. But like a cream puff, to learn how to make the basic batter for that. There are just so many elements in it to me that you can segue into any form of cooking. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. But I do love, and the appetizers. utilizing lots of fresh veg. And that's the real difference in a lot of cooking that we're all, I think, very interested in and trying to do now. It doesn't have to be something fancy. It needs to be fresh, and your ingredients are what your meal is about.
That's very true. And I think that frames this cookbook so beautifully because I think people may tend to think of French cuisine as something that is um maybe not so approachable, maybe complicated. When you mentioned mastering the art of French cooking, I remember the first time that I opened that cookbook and I thought, "Oh, there are a lot of things in here that I don't know how to do." Even as someone who, enjoys cooking and has cooked a great deal. And so what I love about Ooh La La Kids Cook French is that you have made it so approachable and delicious, but also, as you said, with incorporating all of these really important things like fresh vegetables and fresh herbs, um, which I think is so fantastic. I think, as you said, it invites families into the kitchen, and teaches kids, about cooking and about nourishing their bodies and how important fresh ingredients are.
Exactly.
So I think you've made it so approachable. Um, I would be remiss if I did not mention the fondue recipe.
Stop. How could I have forgotten the fondue? I mean, that is truthfully the best.
So is this something is fondue something that you have done in your work with, cooking classes and children in the past?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, when we did summer cooking camps, which evolved through the years in any business, you see where the needs are. Each week we had a different theme. And honestly, the biggest turnout for any class in a summer cooking camp was always the French cooking. Always, without a doubt. We filled it, had a waiting list. There's something really fascinating about it. And I think the other thing, and again, it's about the farm to table. I hate to use that. It's been used so often, but it's really true. We had a little herb garden. And when I say an herb garden, I had huge clay pots at the cooking school where we couldn't grow veg in Austin, Texas in the summer, a little too hot, but we did manage to keep a lot of herbs. And we would go out and the kids would cut them to put in their recipes. And honestly, it was like magic. They couldn't believe the taste, the smell, and how they incorporated it into what they made was pretty amazing. And you think about it, of something so simplistic. We talk about how the French seem to have quite a few steps in processing and making any food, and yet the outcome is always clean and simple. It really is a fascinating situation.
That sounds really interesting, and I think you're reminding me a lot about um, just the importance of kids doing for themselves and having those
Yes.
experiences and how they make an impact. So for you as a young child, always being invited into the kitchen and as you said, never being told to leave the kitchen,
Yeah.
look how that has shaped who you are and how you've lived your life and what you bring to children in your classes. Um, and it's the same takeaway for kids as they're cutting herbs out of the herb garden and actually smelling them with their noses and touching them with their hands and having that experience. So what a great reminder for um, families who might be hesitant to cook with their kids in the kitchen. Um, I'm wondering if, because we're talking about this being so approachable, are
Mhm.
there particular recipes or even just one particular recipe that you would recommend that families start with if they're kind of just starting out with bringing their kids into the kitchen? Or do
I
you kind
think
of think
it's
you can start
a
anywhere?
good, it's a good question. I think for kids, it's very important to involve them in the process, right? Because if they look through the cookbook and something catches their eye and piques their interest, of course, that's the most important thing to them. As a parent and as an educator, you can always try to sway a little bit one way or the other. I would say, as far as skill sets go, depending, let's just say we have a 9 or 10-year-old child that hasn't done much cooking. I would think a soup is about the most forgiving that you can make because it involves all the fresh ingredients. It involves chopping, mixing, but then basically the soup makes itself, right? Once you've done all of that and you've put all of your ingredients in, you set it on the stove, you cook it however long you're supposed to cook it. It's good for days. I would think a soup, this would be a great way to start. And I also think the crepes and the fondue. The fondue you can't go wrong with.
Can you go wrong with cheese? I don't
No,
think you can.
you can't. And a chocolate fondue, even more simplistic. I remember when my kids were little, every Valentine's Day, we'd make chocolate fondue and dip marshmallows and strawberries and cookies in it. I mean, they're in their 30s and 40s now, and they do it with their kids. Those are the kinds of things that people remember. That's what you can pass on to your kids.
Absolutely. You're not only passing on recipes, but you're passing on just the joy of being together and the the confidence that you give
Yes.
them when you allow them into the kitchen and you allow them to put a strawberry on a stick and stick it into some very warm chocolate and you
Yes.
give them that responsibility. That goes a long way. That's very empowering. So I can definitely see that being a memory that would last a lifetime. Aside from some of the things that we talked about, are there any other key takeaways from the book that you want readers to know about as they're thinking about this book?
I would just say what we've touched on so far, and you've really echoed what I've said for 35 years. If you allow children to be in the kitchen, or actually anything, but specifically we're talking about recipes, and provide them with an opportunity to even do the smallest of things. I mean, it's something that's so self-gratifying and that you don't have to work years and years to become good at. Ballet, kickball, softball, football, whatever it may be, takes a long time to get good. When you are proficient at something, then it becomes fun to do and you become better and better. But to me, cooking has always been something that you can do in an hour or 30 minutes, or even with the smallest child, 5 minutes, and they've made it. And it's something they own and they feel proud of. I don't think there's anything better we can do for our kids than that.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's so many things that you're teaching your kids when you're cooking with them. And like you said, even with something so simple, um, you know, even if you take 20 minutes and you make something, simple snacks with your child, that's 20 minutes where you showed them that you've focused on them, you care about them and what they put in their bodies. You've put your phone down, you've made eye contact, which I think, is it can be a challenge. Can be a
It
challenge.
is a challenge. Yes, I agree with you. And I think it is the time spent. And I've always said it's really with cooking with kids, it's not about the destination. It really is about the journey.
That's very true, as are so many things in life. So thank you
Very
so
true.
much for reminding us of that. As we begin to wind down, I want to make sure our listeners can find you online and learn more about the cookbook. So how should people find you or get in touch with you?
Well, thank you for mentioning the websites. I've now combined all of that into a new website, which is just simply my name. It's barbarabeery.com. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm going to be very honest with you. I love social media. I read a lot, but I don't add a lot. But I will be doing so as this cookbook comes to fruition. And yes, please get in touch. Either way would be wonderful.
And you can grab your copy of Ooh La La Kids Cook French this November 2025. You can find it on familias.com and everywhere books are sold. Barbara, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
As we conclude today's podcast, I'd like to thank Familias for their support in bringing this podcast to your ears and your heart. We'd be thrilled if you subscribed to the podcast and left us a review. And when you're ready for that next amazing book or cooking adventure, we'd be honored if you choose a book from Familias. One step at a time, we can make the world a happier place.